Hello, how are you? Me? You don't want to know. Um, I wanted to share with you a reference that I've found that I really enjoy. I don't suppose too many have heard of this guy. His name is Raymond Francis, and he's a chemist, one who got very, very sick. And he let medical science take it as far as it could. And when they gave up on him, he took charge of his own health and he healed himself. And then he went on using his knowledge of chemistry to study the whole supplement thing. Now, it's a long time ago. He's got a podcast. His website is called beyondhealth.com. And I'll give you a link. He's got a little cheat sheet if you want to, if you're looking at two or three different, you know, multivitamins, and you're not sure which one to pick. He's got a cheat sheet where it gives you some tricks that you can look for to distinguish the really good stuff from where the manufacturers have cut corners. And so I use this a lot. I use his site a lot. He also has a line of, not too many, but he's got maybe a couple of dozen products or something. Maybe he's got more, I don't know. I don't tend to buy his stuff because it's the best, and so it tends to be somewhat more expensive. So there's a few of his things I buy, but boy, you can't beat it for knowledge. He has articles and newsletters, all of it free to access, and the podcasts and everything else, and he really knows what he's talking about. You can pick up some really wonderful things. And he wouldn't be telling you how to pick a good supplement if he only wanted you to buy his own. Okay. Um, oh, shucks. I didn't want to talk about me. I'm still feeling, I don't know, let's call it under the weather. Um, it's not as bad as it's been. The pain isn't quite so bad, but it's challenging. And, you know, I don't think I need to apologize for that. It's just what is. Um, as my dad used to say, wish in one hand and spit in the other one and see which one fills up faster. Now, being an old Navy chief, I'm sure you know that's a polite ism, but anyway, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride there. That cleans it up a little. I don't care about anything anymore but truth. My brother was just up for a visit, and boy, did I surprise myself. I just really came out with some things that have quietly, silently bothered me for decades. And he and I have, we're not alike, not hardly, and yet in our later life, we're both above 50 now, we have managed to come to a really cool tolerance for one another. We've matured, in other words, Hey, age is a good thing. It's kind of hard on the body sometimes, but not on the spirit. You gain a lot over time. Really, a lot of what seems to be wisdom, a lot of times it's just experience. No big deal. Anyway, our relationship was good enough that I felt that I could share what was inside me. I don't know that it was all in my heart, but he received it pretty well. He really did. He didn't frown, he didn't swear, he didn't walk out. And that's a good thing. I'm so in love with truth. It's not anymore that I'm in love with it. Right now, I don't feel in love with anything but source. That's it. I've got nothing to spare, nothing to share but for source. But somehow I just know that's going to work out just fine because it's Source that shares through me anyway. And by being only that, I'm just losing my preferences, you know, things that I cared about. All my lists and things are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. I even, you know, I go through and unsubscribe to things where, you know, if 5 out of the last 6 uploads haven't been something I wanted to watch, I don't sub anymore. I don't sub anybody unless I want to watch what they upload. I don't care. Only truth, only what's real. That's kind of what this is like for me. Other things are dying away. Okay, enough of that already. Enough. Now I have one journal written and ready, but it's 8 pages. I don't feel like doing that. Tell you what, let me check here. I did a strange thing, and I can't tell you why, because there is no why. It's just something I felt like doing, so I did it. This January of 2012, for whatever reason, I started handwriting my journals. And there's a lot of them, and they're pretty long. And so, since I'm not writing journals now, my gosh, I said long. This is going to be really long. I thought maybe I'd start reading some of these to you. It bothers me a little bit because I won't have a scribed anything because the writing is in pencil in my, just the way I used to do it for decades and decades. So let me try one of them here. I've got one from January 3rd. This is back when I was really into Papa G. He's also called Punja. His real name was Harilal Punja, and so they called him Punja Ji, which, as you can imagine, is a bit tricky to say, so you can see how he wound up being called Papa G. So it's called Loving Punja Ji, That, Loving That, Dark Side of Emptiness. It's from January 3rd. I didn't put Mayan days on this. How's this for unusual? The journals have been electronic for over 2 years now. Here, this one is handwritten. It doesn't matter the form they take. The light in them is the same. So, let us see what will come of this. Upon arising, along with the morning cup of coffee, I would have several books I would read from. That has changed now, and all I read is Punjaji's biography. The other books sit under it, unread. Currently, parenthetically, I listed them. I Am That, Cosmos of Soul, Rumi's Poetry Collection, and Catastrophobia, which I never got into. Okay, often the tears fall as I read. I am in communion with this master during this time. Other times as well, but perhaps none so clear as at this time. Or when I'm watching his video satsangs. These are precious times. You can ride in on the wave, the frequency, the energy of the Guru. This morning, he told me clearly that he is always with me now. Others I have not trusted to this extent, but I have made him completely welcome in my life, in all of my being. He is my guru, my teacher, and the fact that he is not currently in body in 3D will not hinder that. I'll simply hone my perception and communication skills until all comes clear for me. It isn't quite clear yet. Sometimes, but not always. I am in love with him, not as a man, but as the divine. Nor am I a woman, but also the divine. So are you. It is the eternal love affair, God with God, in all aspects and manifestations, appearances as this or that in 3D, all is that, loving that, but not all see yet. For some reason, I've been enabled to see. Couldn't tell you why. It has come with or brought great peace in its wake, and this I would share. My efforts to do so may have been awkward, but those in heart can feel the radiance that is there, even if poorly or awkwardly shared. Blessing is. Why do I write this journal by hand? Whom Jaji called me to. Things are changing, ever changing for me. I am glad to be free to go along with it and in the flow. The why doesn't come first, just the what. So I obey heart's call. I enjoy. It is enough. I will record some of last night's healing session with Ken on the phone. We meet every 2 or 3 weeks this way. He's most helpful on my path, both with his healing abilities and his power of integration, for lack of a better word. I find in him sufficient awareness or realization that I am almost always understood. That's rare. It is a great blessing to have in a healer. Now, folks, I know I've mentioned him any number of times, and some of you have asked about him, so I got his permission. I'll give you his phone number. He lives in Bozeman, Montana. He doesn't use a computer, so there's no email, there's no Skype, there's nothing but the telephone. Or, if you wanted to write, I could give you his address. But anyway, he is at 406-585-9918. 406-585-9918. We discuss everything, since everything is relevant to my state, the way I see it. He always laughs. Well, in our previous session, I had him tune in to several people looking for confirmation about my attunement about them. There were 2 who were rather important to me, on whom he got a lesser reading than I did. Now, this shook me up a good bit, though I didn't fully realize it in the moment. After the call, I cried off and on for 2 or 3 days. There was deep distress because, absent discernment, I have nothing. When you trust only self, source, and higher self, your discernment is really important. If I am not in touch with the truth, well, this is important. I had much to surrender here to come to balance and peace again. Now, peace is always there, friends. It's just that we lose sight of it sometimes. I realized also that I must question my strong reliance on Ken. my tendency to accept and believe what he says. He was perhaps the last bastion, the last external being, although nobody's external. That looks so silly, that I trusted. All trust must be withdrawn from the external. Only source, only higher self must be trusted. Only these are worthy of our trust. All else is fleeting, is questionable, is unworthy of our complete trust. Yet, breaking such ties can be painful, so I cried. Also, of course, this was the occasion for me to step back from the two he reported on to get a better look. Not to just automatically accept what he said, but to look again for myself. So there was some measure of trust in them too that must be withdrawn. And this also hurt a bit. We don't want blind belief. Just because we rely on someone, just because we think highly of them, we still don't want blind belief in all they say. The bulk of the pain, though, was not that. Now, it won't likely fit into words, but it was trust in inner self that was violated here, or at least called into question. If we are sufficiently surrendered, unattached, then we must be open to lessons, all lessons life brings us. We're not so arrogant as to believe we are right in all of our understandings. What a sad state that is, trusting your mind. We are open, are empty enough to learn. This can be painful. We must not shrink from that, but rather recognize the divine hand at work in us. Our love of truth will have it no other way. Our devotion to that is complete. We lay ourselves down before it, willing to make whatever surrender is called for. We are open to be hurt. To the hurt that comes our way with this, we simply trust inner self and source. Are they different? I don't know. So, though I thought during this painful time to call Ken and discuss it with him, I held off in favor of putting trust in source. So, last night was our first discussion since that last time. All this I shared with him. He was quite pleased that I was also brought to question him. To him, this was most important. On further discussion, we realized that I had not quite understood his assessment of one of those two. And I had realized on further reflection that I actually agreed with him on the other. Interesting the way Source arranges things so perfectly. So perfectly, I heard what I needed to hear to overcome certain tendencies to trust in the external. Where my faith in that was watered down by being even somewhat vested in other people, this wound was cauterized and healed. I am much clearer now for having gone through that. Most pain is like that. It's a good thing. So, though to me that was the main part of the healing session, we do handle physical things too. So there was more to come. It was surprising. This session I had collected, a list, a set of 7 or 8 people I wanted the thumbnail sketch, his basic intuition of. Nothing in depth, just something basic with which to compare notes, so to speak. Just a few words. So he went down my list with me with very few surprises. Now, this is usual for us. We're usually quite in tune. Having gotten to the end and finding there, as in the world, precious little to place any trust in, I had one more request of him. Previously, he'd mentioned he could recommend a few he felt good about, that he trusted. Well, I got to the end and I asked him to please recommend a channel of light where both the individual and the beings being channeled were pure, were clearly light. You could have knocked me over with a feather when I heard his response. He left me dithering and mumbling. He said, "That would be you." I was stunned. Boy, I tell you folks, I forget this stuff, you know. It's strange. Totally forgot this. Usually, I'm pretty good on my feet. Something might surprise me, but it usually hits later. Like after the call? Not this time. I was completely thrown off. He laughed in delight. Something, I think, about me being like a child, he said. I don't recall exactly. One of the things I'd brought to him right at the beginning of the call was that several of my internet correspondents were beginning to revere me, to really look up to me. I shared with him that I'd become adept at brushing such things off, for I clearly knew that it was only, and I just lost my place, only Source who was acting and being seen, being loved, being revered there. So all praise belongs to Source. Also, I was good at holding up the mirror for the devotee, showing them how they were only seeing their own higher self in me. When one can see the divine in another this way, it is because one has become that, or else you couldn't see it. So, I used to share this. For most devotees, well, this is fine. This comes as a bit of a surprise, and it puts them off into their own heart to ponder. Thus, they're deflected from any worship or reverence of me. I am or have not been comfortable with anyone looking up to me. Like Papaji, I want to tell them there is no difference between you and me. Well, that works well enough, or it has until recently, when I have found a few who do fully understand this already. Yet they would still lay flowers at these feet. It is disconcerting. Or it was at this time. My business or delight has been to be as empty as possible, to get out of the way of the shining of Source light. I have encouraged this divine flow and let Source be the all of it, using this self as just a conduit. I have enjoyed the empty anonymity of this. It has been so very peaceful. Well, that bubble is busted. For through the play of events, Source has been showing me that this must somehow shift or change. I must somehow deal more closely with it, with the person here. I don't know. That's still being shown. One thing turned up by this healing session, which always precedes the phone call, was a particular entity that was being removed from its previous quote-unquote home in my lower torso. This being's work included feeding me ideas of unworthiness, of somehow being less than. Clearly, such things can hide under the guise of emptiness, of being invisible. So, source flow is enabled. This requires some observation now. Soon it will be seen and rooted out in the seeing, no more able to hide. Thus, though I don't know where this is going, I know this aspect of being is in flux. I'll be looking closer at all the negative self-appraisal. Not quite so quick to let it pass. I seem to have much in me that resists thinking well of the self. How about you? I think this is true of a lot of us, if not most of us. It's how we've been trained. I have spent many lifetimes as a renunciate. That path is comfortable to me. I've walked many miles in those empty shoes, negating self. A renunciate is one who renounces the comforts of life and joins a monastery or lives in a cave or, that kind of thing. Well, the thing has come in this life, not for negation, but rather for integration. That is the whole theme of my life of late. Well, yes, full integration with higher self, whatever that is. In this life, we've been given the vision of the physical upliftment, the ascension in or with the flesh. Flesh converted to crystalline light. Just think of it. Thus, unlike perhaps all of our other lifetimes, our embodiments, the desire is not to rise up into that, oh boy, but to draw that down into 3D. To have the higher to manifest right here. Well, this is quite a different focus for most of us, used to looking to leave 3D behind on rising up. No. The focus, at least my focus, is quite different now. The dimensions are, as it were, merging in some way. I am finding it quite possible to be higher dimensional right here while still in 3D. As usual, it requires but a shift in perspective. It may have been there and available in all of those embodiments, just not known. Thus, this I don't know. My handwriting is I guess my hand was a little tired. After all, this is page 13. It may also be a new dispensation, a new grant of spirit for this particular time. What do you think? Bottom line, it doesn't matter. This is here now. That's what counts. Now here. As in nowhere. Now here. See? So the focus has shifted to bringing the light, the higher dimensional being, down here into 3D, where before it was always to rise up from 3D into that. Well, pretty major change, I'd say. I look forward to the fruit it produces in us all. Those who can accept it and make the shift. 3D was never so blessed. We bring maximum light into her, into Mother Earth. Then we ascend. on the wings of that, on the wings, we lower into form. It is quite beautiful, this new vision of things, rather like my unicorn placement here in this beautiful fairyland. No more running away, but rather the full anchoring of the light right here, and our full presence remaining to all rise up together. How very beautiful. My hand grows weary. It's page 14. There is so much more to be said. Who knows? I may be writing a book here. Anything is possible, of course. Still, I await the elephant's foot on mine for such an undertaking. But wait, I wonder, could the negative work of the outgoing entity have been delaying it? Have been interfering? I'll have to watch closely. Now that I'm onto it, its work won't be successful anymore. Though it was a bit frightening, for who among us hasn't gone down in smoke again and again, being lured out of purity by the ego, the wily mind, in many lifetimes. But now, as matured souls, we know the danger well. Even so, I'm being clearly shown that there is benefit in perhaps a good self-image. I don't know. What is clear is that simple negation, while it's fine for most things, won't work for this. I've been shown an entity hiding in the folds of negation's garment. That won't do. No more simple, mindless negation. Now we look. Okay, so that was, 3/4 of a year ago, that journal. It was fun for me to share. I don't identify, I have moved on so much from this, friends, but still, it's a lovely journal. I hope you enjoyed it. Namaste.